Here is the uncomfortable truth you aren't ready to hear. The market wasn't designed to make you rich. It was designed to find your deepest psychological weakness and tax you for it. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? Especially when you've spent your nights studying charts until your eyes burn, chasing a dream that feels like it's constantly slipping through your fingers. But here is the cold, hard truth. Every flashing green candle, every expert prediction, and every loud promise of overnight wealth is often just a hypnotic illusion. It is a digital mechanism designed to do one thing: transfer money from the pockets of the impatient into the hands of the patient. If you've been feeling like you're running on a treadmill that only moves backward, it's not because you aren't working hard enough. It's because you are being hunted by a system that knows your own brain better than you do. Hey everyone, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Trader Whisper. Before we go any further, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. It really helps support the channel and keeps me motivated to keep creating this kind of high-level content for you. I want to build a community where we stop being the prey and start becoming the pros. I remember my early days vividly. I didn't come into this thinking it was a lottery. I came into this thinking it was a profession. I studied the Greeks, I memorized candlestick patterns, and I read every technical analysis book I could get my hands on. I treated it like a high-stakes university exam. And while that knowledge gave me a foundation, because let's be real, a trader who understands price action is light years ahead of a moonshot gambler, I quickly realized that the exam never ends. I thought trading was strictly an intelligence test, a game where the person with the most data and the highest IQ wins by default. But the market isn't just testing your brain, it's testing your blood pressure. It is an intelligence test, yes, but it's also a grueling test of your patience and your emotional threshold. The market respects your education. It respects the fact that you've read the books and learned the structures. But we also know that under pressure, most people's book smarts evaporate. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD in finance if your heart starts racing and you panic sell a winning position the moment it dips a fraction. That's where the mirror comes in. The charts don't just show you price, they show you your own hesitation, your own greed, and your own inability to trust the very logic you worked so hard to learn. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't pass the emotional test, the market will treat you exactly like a beginner. The statistics are haunting for a reason. 90% of traders lose money. And they don't fail because they are stupid. Many are brilliant people. They fail because they are playing an incomplete game. They are out there focusing 100% of their energy on the technical test, while failing the psychological one. They think they are fighting the algos, but they are actually just fighting their own nervous system. They sit in front of their screens, hoping and praying when the math goes against them. But in this room, hope is the most expensive emotion you can have. Hope is essentially a donation you are making to the people who actually have a system they can stick to when the world feels like it's falling apart. I spent years in that cycle. The cycle of being smart enough to know better, but too emotional to do better. I'd have a few great days where my analysis was spot on. I'd feel like I'd finally arrived. And then I'd give it all back because I couldn't control my own hands during a spike in volatility. I realized that my intelligence was my engine, but my discipline was the steering wheel. Without both, you're just a fast car headed for a brick wall. This video isn't about some get-rich-quick scheme. This is about pulling back the curtain on the matrix of the markets. Over the next few sections, I'm going to show you how to stop being an emotional donor and start becoming a professional who collects. We're going to talk about why Andrew Aziz's $6,000 disaster was the best thing that ever happened to him, and how a simple shift in your perspective, moving from results to process, can change your bank account forever. By the time we reach the end of this journey, you won't just see the charts differently, you'll see yourself differently. You'll understand why the most successful traders are often the most bored people in the room, and why that boredom is the ultimate secret to freedom. So, if you're tired of being the one who pays for everyone else's vacation, stick with me. We are about to change the way you play this game, permanently. The $6,000 10-minute disaster. But to understand how to stop paying the market's stupidity tax, we first have to look at the moment a professional trader was born from the ashes of a spectacular, ego-driven disaster. Let's talk about Andrew Aziz. If you haven't heard the name, Andrew is one of the most respected figures in the day trading world today. A best-selling author and a mentor who built an entire community based on the business of trading. But he didn't start as a guru. He started as a guy with a PhD and a very expensive lesson to learn. You should care about his story, because he represents the brilliant person who thought intelligence alone was enough to conquer the markets, until the markets checked his ego in the most brutal way possible. His entry into this world is a story that should be taught in every business school, specifically in a class called How to Not Set Your Life on Fire in 10 Minutes. On his very first day, Andrew walked into the market and lost $6,000 in less time than it takes most people to order a coffee. Just think about that number for a second. $6,000. For most of us, that's not just a bad day at the office. That's a call your landlord and tell them you're going to be late on rent kind of day. It's the price of a decent used car or a very fancy vacation, vanished into the digital ether faster than he could even process what was happening. Now, I've seen a lot of people try to explain this away by saying the market was rigged, or that he just had bad luck. But that's the amateur talking. The truth is much more painful. Andrew lost that money because he approached the greatest financial arena on earth with nothing but excitement, ego, and exactly zero preparation. He was essentially a person trying to fly a Boeing 747 because he'd seen a few pictures of clouds. He fell into what I call the expensive dance. You see a stock chart starting to go vertical. Those green candles are screaming at you. And suddenly you aren't a rational human being anymore. Bloop! You're just a bundle of FOMO, clicking the buy button, because you're terrified the big move is going to happen without you. There's no exit strategy, no calculation of risk, just pure, unadulterated hope. And as I always say, in this room, hope is just a very polite way of describing a donation. Andrew wasn't trading. He was participating in a high-speed redistribution of wealth from his bank account to someone who actually knew what they were doing. The irony is that most of us treat parallel parking with more caution and preparation than we do our first $10,000 trading account. We wouldn't dream of walking into a hospital and picking up a scalpel because we watched a few medical dramas. Yet we think we can outsmart a system built by the world's brightest minds just because we have a high-speed internet connection and a good feeling about a tech stock. Andrew's $6,000 punch in the face wasn't the market being cruel. It was the market being a very expensive, very honest teacher. It was showing him that confidence without competence is a terminal illness for your capital. That loss taught him, and eventually it taught the rest of us, that the professional doesn't just buy a stock. The professional enters a trade with a blueprint. They've already accepted the loss mentally before they ever pull the trigger. They know exactly where they're getting out if the market says no, and they know exactly where they're taking their profit if the market says yes. They don't negotiate with the screen. When Andrew lost that money, he was negotiating with his ego, hoping the price would turn around because he deserved a win. But the market doesn't care about your feelings, your mortgage, or your pride. It only respects one thing: your level of preparation. I can't help but laugh a little when I look back at the frantic energy beginners bring to the table. That feeling that if you don't click buy right this second, the opportunity of a lifetime will vanish forever. It's a classic amateur mistake. We think the opportunity is rare, so we rush. The professional knows that opportunities are like city buses. There's always another one coming in 15 minutes. But if you jump in front of this one without a plan, you won't be around to catch the next one. Andrew had to lose $6,000 to realise that trading isn't an adrenaline sport. It's a craft. It's a ritual. It's moving from the chaos of the gamble into the precision of a system. And until you realise that your ego is the most expensive thing you own, you're just a donor waiting for your next lesson to arrive. Why your biology is programmed to make you poor. Once you realise that your ego is your most expensive liability, you have to ask yourself a very uncomfortable question. Why is it so hard to just follow the rules? The answer isn't that you're weak or lack willpower. It's that your brain is essentially running on outdated software. We are walking around with hardware evolved over thousands of years to prioritise immediate security, and we're trying to use it to navigate a 21st century digital landscape built on probability. When you put real money at risk, your nervous system doesn't see pennies per share or a statistical distribution. It interprets the potential loss as a direct threat to your stability and well-being. Back in the day, our ancestors survived because they reacted instantly to uncertainty. That fight or flight response was a masterpiece of evolution for physical survival. But in the world of trading, that same instinct is a total malfunction. When a trade moves against you, and you see that red number growing, your brain's amygdala, the ancient alarm system, doesn't understand that this is just a business expense. It triggers a physiological response. Your heart rate picks up, your breathing gets shallow, and your focus narrows to the point of tunnel vision. At that moment, you aren't a sophisticated trader anymore. You're just a stressed out primate trying not to get eaten. This is the biological reason why you freeze when a stock hits your stop loss. Research in neuroeconomics has shown that the brain processes financial loss in the same regions that handle physical pain. It's not just sadness, it's a sting. So when your stop loss is triggered, your brain tries to protect you from that pain by offering up some creative pseudo-logic. It whispers, "Just wait, it'll bounce back." Or, "This company is too good to stay down." It feels like a rational thought, but it's actually an emotional reflex, trying to avoid the discomfort of being wrong. Your brain is trying to hide from the loss, but unfortunately, the market doesn't reward hiding. The real insight here, and the one that finally made things click for me, is that discipline isn't just about trying harder. It's about your physiological state. If the risk is too high, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, math, and following that beautiful trading plan, literally shuts down. It's like trying to solve a complex puzzle while a tiger is chasing you. It's not going to happen. You can have the world's most profitable strategy, but if your position size is so big that it triggers your survival mode, you will find a way to self-sabotage every single time. I like to joke that we're all just highly evolved monkeys with high-speed internet, but the joke is on us if we don't respect our biology. The professionals understand that they can't outthink their instincts, so they build systems to bypass them. They know that if their emotional state is above a certain level, they are no longer in control. Their ancient survival brain is. That's why we focus so much on staying calm and neutral. If you're trading for the rush or the excitement, you're essentially asking your amygdala to take the steering wheel. And trust me, your inner caveman is a terrible fund manager. He doesn't understand risk to reward ratios. He only understands run away or get more food. To win at this game, you have to learn how to keep that caveman quiet so the professional in you can actually do the work. So, how do we keep this inner caveman from grabbing the steering wheel? The solution isn't to try and kill your emotions. That's impossible unless you're a robot. But to manage the environment that triggers them. The most effective way to keep your instincts at bay is to trade at a size that doesn't trigger a physical reaction. If your heart starts pounding when you enter a trade, your position is too big. Period. By lowering your risk to a level where a loss feels like a minor data point rather than a disaster, you keep your logical brain in charge. You have to make the trade boring enough that your survival instincts don't feel the need to show up. Once you achieve that calm, you're finally ready to stop gambling and start executing a real system. The profitable boredom, how one setup beats 1,000. Once you've successfully silenced that inner caveman by keeping your risk low enough to actually breathe, you're finally ready to pick up your weapon. But the mistake most people make is trying to carry an entire armoury when all they really need is a single sharpened blade. Most traders walk into this arena looking like they're trying to collect trading trophies, cluttering their screens with RSI, MACD, Bollinger Bands, and a dozen other indicators that honestly look more like a digital Jackson Pollock painting than a trading plan. They think that more tools equal more money, but in reality, that's like thinking that owning 10 different steering wheels will somehow make you a better race car driver. Andrew Aziz didn't build his empire by being a jack of all trades. He did it by becoming a specialist, a sniper, who waited for one very specific, very boring setup called the Opening Range Breakout, or ORB. Now, I want to be clear. The ORB isn't the only way to make money. The trading world is vast, and there are successful traders out there who wouldn't touch an ORB with a 10-foot pole because they've found their own bread and butter in scalp trading, swing trading, or long-term reversals. But the lesson here isn't that the ORB is a magic pill. It's that Aziz found the one strategy that resonated with his personality, and he refused to look away. For him, that meant scanning for stocks in play, specific outliers gapping up or down, often by at least 2% on volume that is significantly higher than the average. For someone else, their criteria might be completely different, focusing on low-float runners or blue-chip earnings plays. The secret isn't the 2% gap. It's the fact that he defined his criteria and stuck to them. When the bell rings, he doesn't just jump in like a frantic shopper on Black Friday. He waits. For his specific style, he watches that first 5-minute candle form a range. Then, he looks for the price to break that range with high volume, entering on a pullback with a clear stop loss and a 2-to-1 profit to loss target. Another trader might enter on the 1-hour chart or wait for a 30-minute consolidation. Both can be right. The only way you become wrong is when you try to do both at the same time. I've seen traders get so frustrated because they try a setup 3 times, lose twice, and then scream that the strategy is broken before running off to find the next shiny object. You know the ones, that new unbeatable AI indicator, or the latest secret strategy being hyped on social media that promises 100% win rates. But you have to prove the math to yourself before you're even allowed to have an opinion on it. The power isn't in the pattern, it's in the data. You need to take that one setup that makes sense to your brain and backtest it for at least 200 trades using historical data on a specific asset. You need to see the cold, hard numbers of how it performs in a bull market, a bear market, and a sideways market. We live in a world that praises multitasking and variety, but the market rewards the person who can do the same boring thing over and over without getting distracted by the hype of the week. It's about becoming a specialist in a world of generalists. If you want excitement, go to the movies. If you want a career, pick your one setup, do the 200 trade backtest to confirm the edge is real, and then trade it with the cold, calculated discipline of a sniper. The edge isn't in the complexity of the strategy, it's in the depth of your mastery and your willingness to trust your own data when the rest of the world is chasing shadows. The math of staying alive. Mastering a single boring setup is the weapon in your hand, but without the cold, hard mathematics of survival, that weapon is just as likely to explode in your face as it is to hit the target. Most people treat their trading account like a stack of chips at a blackjack table, but the professionals? We treat it like a biological organism that needs to stay alive at all costs. You see, the math of staying alive isn't just some dry accounting exercise. It is the thin line between a career that spans decades and a blowout that sends you back to a 9-to-5 within a week. If you think you can feel your way through position sizing, you aren't a trader, you're just a gambler with a really expensive hobby. I've seen brilliant people, engineers, doctors, even rocket scientists, enter this arena and lose everything because they couldn't grasp the brutal asymmetry of a loss. This is the math that will keep you awake at night if you don't respect it. If you lose 10% of your account, you need an 11% gain to get back to even. Not a big deal, right? But if you bet the farm on a sure thing and lose 50%, you don't need a 50% gain to recover. You need a 100% gain just to see the surface of the water again. The math is a predator. It is weighted against the reckless. This is why I live and die by the 1% rule. I never, ever risk more than 1% of our total account equity on a single trade. If I have a $10,000 account, I am willing to lose exactly $100 to find out if my trade idea is right. If I'm wrong, I'm still 99% alive. If you're risking 10% or 20% because you're feeling lucky, you're essentially playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded chamber. To make this work, you have to use the position size formula. You don't just buy 1,000 shares because it sounds like a nice round number. You take your dollar risk, let's say that $100, and you divide it by the distance between your entry price and your stop loss. If that distance is 50 cents, you buy 200 shares. If the distance is only 10 cents because the setup is tight, you buy 1,000 shares. The risk stays the same, only the volume changes. It's like a thermostat for your emotions. When the risk is fixed and small, your brain stays in logic mode. When the risk is massive and random, you trigger that pseudo-logic we talked about earlier, where you start bargaining with the market like you're at a flea market. Please, just let me break even and I'll never do it again. Spoiler alert, the market isn't listening. I've seen so many traders blow up because their ego told them that trading small was for cowards. They wanted the big win, the exciting story, the screenshot they could post to prove they're a hero. But in this world, the hero traders are all dead. The survivors are the ones who are cowardly enough to respect the math. We don't trade for excitement. We trade for asymmetric risk to reward. We want to risk $1 to make $2 or $3. If you can maintain a 2-to-1 ratio, you can be wrong 60% of the time and still be making a very comfortable living. Let that sink in. You can be a failure by almost every academic standard, losing more often than you win, and still be a professional success. That is the magic of the math. The secret to staying in this game isn't about how much you can make. It's about how little you can lose while you wait for your edge to show up. We define the loss first, we calculate the size second, and we pull the trigger third. If you do it in any other order, you're just hoping for a miracle. If your retirement plan relies on a miracle, you might want to start looking for a more reliable God. The math of survival is your only true protection in a world of random outcomes. It turns the chaos of the market into a predictable business model, and once you embrace it, the fear of ruin finally disappears, replaced by the calm, methodical execution of a professional. The rituals of the professional. Once you have the ironclad math of survival protecting your bank account, you begin to realise that the battle isn't won during market hours. It's won in the silent, lonely moments before the rest of the world even hits the snooze button. If anyone tells you that professional trading is about waking up at 9:25 a.m. and clicking buttons in your pyjamas while eating cereal, they are selling you a fantasy that usually ends in a very fast return to a corporate cubicle. People like Andrew Aziz, who have turned this into a high-performance craft, live by a set of rituals that look less like a job and more like a monk preparing for a sacred ceremony. You see, trading capital is renewable, but our emotional capital, our patience, our focus, and our sanity is a finite resource. It drains every time the market ticks, and if we don't protect it with a morning routine, we're essentially walking into a gunfight with a water balloon. Andrew usually starts his day at 5:30 a.m, and it's not because he's a masochist who loves the cold morning air. It's because he knows that a cluttered mind is a bankrupt mind. By the time the opening bell screams, the day is already half decided. He spent hours reviewing the global markets, filtering out the garbage, and narrowing his focus down to just 2 or 3 high-probability candidates. He isn't reacting to the news. He's already anticipated it. He goes through a 3-question checklist before he even touches the keyboard. Am I rested? Is my plan written down? Am I prepared to lose today? That last question is the most important one. Look, I need you to hear this. It is perfectly okay to have losing days. It is okay if you lose today, tomorrow, and even the day after tomorrow. There is no strategy on this planet, none, that doesn't have losing streaks. Even the absolute best traders in history have days where they look like they've never seen a chart before. The holy grail isn't a 100% win rate. It's being able to look at a week of red and still be profitable at the end of the month or the end of the year. Trading isn't a sprint to see who can make the most money by Friday. It's a marathon where the only goal is to stay upright until the finish line. But let's talk about the part no one likes to discuss, the max loss day. This is the moment where the strategy fails, the market does something insane, and you hit that predefined limit where you've lost as much as you're allowed to lose in 24 hours. This is where most people fall apart, start revenge trading to get their money back, and end up doubling their losses. But the pros have a recovery protocol that is as rigid as a military order. When Andrew hits his max loss, he doesn't just try harder. He shuts the laptop. He physically leaves the room. He might go to the gym to burn off the stress hormones, or he might go for a walk to remind his brain that the world is bigger than a 5-minute chart. He doesn't look at the screen for the rest of the day because he knows his logic mode has been hijacked by frustration. I've realized over time that if my trading day feels like an adrenaline-pumping scene from a Hollywood movie, I'm probably doing something wrong. My best days are so boring, I could almost fall asleep. I follow the checklist, I wait for the setup, I execute, and I walk away. The ritual is the armor that protects us from our own worst impulses. It's about building a success environment where making the right decision is the easiest thing to do. When you embrace the rituals, the preparation, and the disciplined recovery, you move into a space where the money becomes a byproduct of the process. You stop chasing the daily dopamine hit, and you start focusing on the long-term curve. And that's when the whisper of the market finally starts making sense. The identity shift. Once you stop chasing the daily dopamine hit and start respecting the sacred silence of the ritual, you realize that the ultimate evolution isn't about finding a better indicator, but about becoming an entirely different person. This final stage is what I call the great identity shift. The moment where you stop being someone who tries to trade and you finally become a trader. It sounds like a small distinction, but it's the difference between a tourist and a local. When you're just a tourist in the markets, you're constantly looking for a souvenir, a quick win, a screenshot, or a story to tell. But when you become a local, you understand the rhythm of the streets. You don't get distracted by the flashing lights because you've seen them 1,000 times. You move from the frantic hustle culture into a state of calculated execution, where you stop judging your day by how much money you made by the time the market closes, and start judging it by how perfectly you followed your rules the moment the market opened. The truth is, this journey requires a level of self-reliance that most people simply aren't prepared for. While the world tells you that you need to follow the crowd or listen to the latest expert on the news, the professional knows that the only person who can save their account is the one staring back at them in the mirror. You are the CEO, the risk manager, and the executioner all rolled into one. This isn't a team sport. It's an individual mastery of your own psychology. You have to develop the mental toughness to stand by your data when everyone else is panicking, and the humility to admit you're wrong when the price hits your stop loss. It's a lonely path, sure, but it's also the only path that leads to true independence. I've seen so many people fail because they were looking for a leader to tell them what to buy, thinking that someone else had the secret key. But in this game, your edge is your own discipline. Reliance on others is just another form of pseudo-logic your brain uses to avoid taking responsibility for your own results. When you finally stop looking for external validation and start trusting the 200 trade backtest you performed with your own 2 hands, the impossible mountain turns into a clear, manageable path. You start to realize that the legendary traders you admire aren't superhuman. They just reached a point where they trusted their process more than they trusted the noise of the world. They are the ones who survived the $6,000 punches in the face and realized that their own resilience was their greatest asset. So, as we reach the end of this deep dive, I want you to ask yourself, are you ready to stop being a visitor and start being a professional? The path is right there. It starts with a single setup, a 200 trade backtest, and a 1% risk rule. It ends with a version of you that is calmer, sharper, and completely indifferent to the noise of the world. You've heard the whisper of the market today, and now the choice is yours. You can go back to the chaos, or you can take full ownership of your future and start building the life you actually want. This isn't just about money. It's about the freedom that comes from knowing exactly who you are and exactly what you're capable of when the pressure is on. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey here. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, stay disciplined, stay focused, and remember, the market doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you've prepared for.